Back about 40 years ago, when I was in my 30s, this particular gospel about Zacchaeus came up. And before Mass, what I did is I took and put a ladder right in the middle of the sanctuary. Now, this should be easy to answer. Why did I do that? Yeah, because he climbed a tree. They never knew what to expect. You got me older. I don't do that dramatic stuff anymore too much. But yeah, because what I did is the whole notion of climbing the tree, I climbed up to the top of the ladder and I preached my whole Mass from the top of the ladder. Probably people were worried what's going to happen because I can be a little bit clumsy. But since I didn't have that as a prop, I've actually asked, a lot of you know who he is, Jeffrey Lindholm is our seminary intern, and he's going to come forward here now. And Jeffrey, as you see him, hopefully you've heard him preach powerfully. Jeffrey, tell him your height.
Do you not remember?
I remember. You want me
I'm
to?
5'3" and a half.
Yes. So he's 5'3". So what I was going to try to do, but I thought I was going to have you climb the ladder, but I worried that if he fell, the seminary would be really mad with me. Oh, you look pretty. He's also crazy. But anyway, so we're glad to have Jeffrey here. By the way, this weekend, we're also, remembered, you'll hear in the prayer, a priesthood weekend, and seminarians, we're praying for all of them. So we thank Jeffrey that he's here. Thank me that I didn't try to make him go up a ladder. Anyway, let him know we're glad he's here. And Jeff, you make me feel so tall. Anyway, going back to the homily, I did that. There was a reason. As I went to the top, in some way, obviously, I was representing Zacchaeus at the top of the tree. And making that point because in a way, we all know this, that when we hear the scriptures, again, as mentioned many times, they're not just giving us some specific event in Jesus' life. They are doing that, but so much more, that the scriptures were meant for us to hear them and say, what are they saying to each of us? What do we need to hear in this scripture? How can it speak to our lives today? And so thinking about Zacchaeus, we could represent him and say, okay, Lord, yeah, give me some lesson here. Well, think about this. Zacchaeus certainly was someone who was very unliked by the area that he lived in. You've heard this before. He was a hated tax collector, worked for the Roman Empire, and he would overcharge people and keep the money for himself, and they knew that. So there he was. Now, I've had some people say, now, wait a second. You know, Norm, hey, are you saying we're like Zacchaeus? We're not like Zacchaeus. Well, hopefully we're not ripping people off. Hopefully we're not cheating in such a way. On the other hand, from this scripture, looking at Zacchaeus and his response to Jesus, all of us might take a deeper look at ourselves because probably every one of us have things we regret, guilt that we've had, maybe sometimes lingering with us now, maybe something we did 30 years ago, maybe something we did yesterday. Maybe we don't want it on Facebook. Us older people know better, okay? So the reality is, in some way, we can identify with Zacchaeus as someone who isn't fully as loving as we ought to be or is reaching out to people. And so, in a sense, now Zacchaeus can become our teacher. How he responded out of his sinfulness, how he, from the very start, we noticed that he heard that Jesus was coming to town. This was near the end of Jesus' public ministry. And a lot of people heard about him in the various areas. It was Jericho here. They heard that he was someone who preached God's love and healing and mercy, someone who lifted people up and helped them to feel good about themselves and their life and be able to know God forgave them and forgave others. That was certainly Zacchaeus. And what did he do? Yeah, he knew he was a sinner. He knew he fell short. He knew he wasn't as loving. At the same time, he opened himself up to Jesus. He wanted to see Jesus. He wanted to encounter him in some real way that might touch his life as he heard he touched others' lives. So that's why he ran ahead of the crowd, climbed the tree, hoping that Jesus would see him. Taking those steps because he really believed he needed this Jesus who was somebody who showed mercy and healing. And so that's why he did it. And he probably hoped that in some way this Jesus would notice him, which he did, and recognize him and call him forth. And so right away, one of the lessons from Zacchaeus is that we recognize not only that we fall short, but maybe even more importantly, we recognize that all of us, wherever we are in our spiritual journey, need to really seek out the Lord and believe he's seeking out us. Come to a deeper personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Part of that we talk about here. We hear Jesus' word. We often say Jesus is the master teacher. When that word is being spoken in some way, that's Jesus Christ speaking to our hearts today. And obviously, and we probably all take it for granted, I do too, but to believe we receive his body and blood. He loves us that much. He so much desires to be a part of us as he desired to be a part of Zacchaeus on that day. He wants to encounter us, and he wants us to be open to his presence. One, to realize we need him, and two, to then be open and say, Lord, I want to do whatever I can to experience you, to know your love, to make a difference in my life. And this is another very valuable lesson from Zacchaeus, because as Zacchaeus comes down that tree, they have this significant encounter with the Lord. And what does he do? When he realizes the Lord is there, calls him by name and loves him, that makes a difference in Zacchaeus' life. His response after that, touched by love, touched by this Jesus, his response was to say, hey, I give away half of whatever I've had to the poor. And if I've defrauded people in any kind of way, I'll pay them back 4 times. His life was changed. And why? Because he knew he needed God's goodness and love and generosity. It was there for him in Jesus Christ. And touched by that love, really touched by it and open to it, it changed his heart and opened him up. Again, a valuable lesson for us. We know we come up short. Hopefully, Jesus does want to speak to us, feed us with his very life. Are we as open to letting his love? He has a relentless desire to be in relationship with us. That kind of love, do we let that kind of love touch our lives? Not only here, but making a difference in every day. One example I want to use of this from many. Through the years, have many retreats, have done spiritual direction with people, certainly hear confession, all of those opportunities. And I've seen many people, when they really open up to Jesus as someone real and personal who loves them and pays attention to them, I've seen the difference that's made in a lot of people. And people have often said that. Thank you, and thank the Lord that they came to recognize the difference he wanted to make. Here's just one example I remember of many. This was a couple in their 40s, and they had gone on a retreat. They were not from this parish. And they talked to me afterward, and they said, in some way, their whole faith had been touched and changed. And it kind of struck by this because I knew they went to Mass regularly. They, gave in the collection, I'm sure. They seemed to be pretty decent people. But what they said, this was interesting. They said, Father, yes, we've been at Mass, both of us, our whole life. But before this retreat, we tended to think of Mass and other things we're supposed to do in the parish and everything as something we should do, as some obligation we have. But this retreat showed us, realizing more deeply they did Jesus' love, that they then said, wow, now we come to Mass and we do the other things, not because we have to, because it's a Catholic obligation, but because we want to, because we've been so touched by Jesus' love that we want to give back to the Lord. And like Zacchaeus, he left with great joy. And they said that sometimes our faith, well, it can be something that tends to weigh us down or be heavy-handed. Jesus wants to touch us, fill us, and forgive us to give us the deepest joy we can ever find anywhere in life. And that's what this couple realized after this retreat, and it meant so much. One of the other things they saw they could do is in that parish, how they, knowing God's generosity, could be more generous with their time and energy in terms of touching other lives. That now segues me into a commercial, but an important one. You know that the last couple weeks, many of you have been here, we've been talking about stewardship. We've been talking basically about, hey, we know God's so generous to us. He does so much for us. How do we give back to Him? And how do we, in His name, give back to one another? In our community, in our family life, in our workplace. And doing it, again, not because, well, we have to, but because we want to. Because there's no greater mission in life than to touch other people by our own example with His love and goodness. And so what we have here, these are in the pews, and we're going to encourage you, if you want to pick one up around you, to take this. You're also going to receive this next week, but let me fill you in. First of all, there's a pamphlet like this. It's St. Vincent Parish Stewardship Directory. This tells about all the various ministries, commissions, organizations, outreach that this parish has to touch and make a difference in one another's life. Yeah, if you need to find it in front of you or behind you, please, we do want to encourage you to take one. By the way, if for some reason you don't find one, this also is right now, it's in our website in the parish, so you can get that information. It's good even just to know that, because a lot of people don't realize all the aspects of parish life and what it does. Then, in addition to this, there's this trifold, and here you'll have an opportunity, and what we're asking you to do, take it home with you, look at it prayerfully, see what, maybe you've already done some stuff, maybe there's something new you want to do. Because, again, touched by the Lord, you think, yeah, I could do something extra for the Lord, and the Lord helping me bring love to people. And in this, you can take it home today, bring it back next week, checked. If you forget, it'll be here next week. And we'll ask for just some sort of commitment. It also includes, if you're already doing a particular ministry, yeah, you can let us know that. But if you can be open, and some of them, and I'm not going to go through them all, one part is talents that we can help people in our parish and even the neighborhood with, you'll see in there, with different practical things like computer help, cooking, baking, house repair, landscaping. We've had a number of people do that, and people out in the area have said, thank you, what a wonderful parish you have that you offer these kind of things. A lot of the other things, again, and you'll learn more about our various commissions and ministries. So even take that to look and remind yourself. And as I said, you can use this booklet to learn more about them. It's our parish. We're in this together. We're called to make a difference. And like Zacchaeus, hopefully we say, yeah, Lord, you love me. It's hard to even realize that. And coming up to communion. Again, when you come today, especially, I know we can kind of take it as a routine. But to remember, it's Jesus Christ saying, yes, I love you so much that I want to feed you your spiritual hunger, which is the deepest hunger of all, and that I want to become a part of you. That's a loving God in Jesus. Take a quiet moment. Maybe experience that and the joy He wants us to have, and where we might be a little more generous with others in the way He's been so awesomely generous with us. Take that quiet moment.